Hi y'all, this is Sheila Ryan from Designs of a Baby Moon. Today I want to walk you through the process of making one of these gorgeous tiled sparkle blossom zipper bags. So the file comes in 3 sizes. It comes sized for a 6x10 hoop, a 5x7 hoop, as well as a 4x4 hoop. So you can make small ones as well as larger ones. These are great for makeup bags, for little extra accessory bags for your purse. They're great little gifties. It's graduation season and summer bridal season. These are wonderful for like bridal party bags or graduation gifts. They're just really lovely. And I want to show you how to make them. They're made on your embroidery machine. You can use your home embroidery machine or a commercial embroidery machine. They take the pieces that cut off when you're making a quilt and you've got Cuddle on the back. Those strips that you're left over with, sometimes they're like 4 or 8 inches wide because you've given enough for your quilt back and you've got these extra bits. This is what I use those for. And I love making zipper bags with my embroidery machine because they're so fast and they're so perfect. The zipper goes in with the embroidery machine and they're so easy. So you can see that this has a beautiful quilted background. You see those squares on there? That's all done on the embroidery machine. The zipper's put on at the embroidery machine. And then the details are put on with the embroidery machine. So in the file, you get a tutorial. And the tutorial has the cut list. But basically, you're going to need 2 pieces that are the size of your hoop for the outside and the inside, a zipper, a little piece of fold over elastic, and then a little piece of hardware. So I've got lobster D-ring clasps that I like to use because I love that little bitey bite right there. But you could use a regular D-ring. You could simply put the fold over elastic or even a ribbon or your tag if you get tags made. So let's flip this around. Let me show you what I've got on my embroidery machine. I'm going to be making the 6x10 hoop size, which is the 5" by 9" zipper bag. And I'm using a big hoop. I always like to use a bigger hoop than the project actually is because I feel like I have more room to work on it. So I'll flip this around, I'll show you what I'm doing, and we'll get started and we'll make us a beautiful tiles sparkle blossom zipper bag. All right, let's get going. Okay, so I've already got my stabilizer hooped. And let me show you what I'm using. I've got a mesh cutaway. This is a poly mesh cutaway, and I've already run my placement stitch on it. There's a diagram in your tutorial that tells you about this placement stitch, but basically right here, this area right here, this is your channel, and we're going to place our zipper in the channel, like on the channel, but in it between the top and the bottom lines. So the teeth are going to sit right in the middle here, and we're going to put a little piece of tape to hold it down to the stabilizer. We do the zipper first so that it is done and it's out of our way. So let's go ahead and get our zipper. Now I've got a long piece of zipper tape that has my pull way on it down here. And I'm going to simply put it across the, I'm going to leave maybe 1.5 inches out over the edge on the back side. Okay, let's take it off so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing. I'm going to put my teeth right in the middle of that channel. This is a number 5 zipper, but if you're using a number 3 zipper, you're going to be doing the same thing. Your zipper is just going to be longer, and you're going to leave the end with those metal bits, the little metal stoppers, hanging out over the edge of the placement stitch. Okay, so you're not stitching on any metal at all. And I'm just double checking all the way down that my zipper is right in the middle of that channel, and I'm just adding a little bit of tape. Now I'm not putting tape anywhere in here where the zipper is going to be stitched onto. It's outside of the tape is outside of the stitching area. You could put some double-sided tape on the back of the zipper if you wanted to and stick it down that way. This way just, it works and it's easy peasy. And so the second step of the file, second and third really, stitch down the zipper for us. So we're just going to let it stitch a straight line. This straight line is also going to be where our fabric goes, so it's kind of a good indicator of where we're going to be placing our fabric. I'm just cutting off some of those thread tails as we go. That way I don't have so many to deal with later. Okay, let's run the next step, which is gonna stitch down the top area of the zipper. All right, we're ready to place down our first piece of fabric. And what I'm using is called Quilting Cuddle. So it's a Cuddle fabric. It's that, gosh, it's so pretty. This color is actually spruce. It's just a lovely blue-green. And I'm going to take a piece that's big enough for the front of the bag. Okay, I'm just cutting it off the strip that was left over from another project. And I'm going to, you can do this a couple ways. You could fold this over like this. So here's my back side. You could fold it over, lay this so that it covers that stitching line, and let the next line of stitching catch that fold and hold it down. As long as your piece is big enough to cover the whole rest of the bag, it'll work out fine. What I'm going to do instead of folding is I'm going to flip it wrong side up, and I've covered my little zipper. Okay, my bag is covered completely, so it's wide enough. And now I'm going to let this stitch on the wrong side of the fabric and it's going to stitch up all the way to the end. This is just stitching on the same line that the zipper, we stitched it down the zipper to the stabilizer with. So we're not doing anything new here. It's the same little piece. And in the file, there is a cut list, so you know how big to actually cut your pieces of fabric. But I'm using scraps, so I'm just literally not digging in my scrap pile, but I'm kind of digging in my scrap pile. The other thing that I need is I need a little bit of batting or fusible fleece. And so I'm going to go ahead and take my hoop off just so I can show you what I'm doing. But I've got, let's cut that thread out of the way. I've got a piece of fusible fleece that is big enough to cover, right? And I'm going to trim it up just a little bit so I don't have a whole bunch flapping around here. But this is just a leftover piece of fusible fleece for making a bag. And I'm going to cut it down and get rid of these extra pieces. And now I'm going to place the top line of it right up against that stitching line. And then I'm going to fold my fabric over the fusible fleece. And that's going to give the front panel a little bit of stiffness. It'll be really nice. Okay, so let's put this part on, and now it's gonna run another line to hold that the fusible fleece on, the top of the Cuddle fabric down. It's right on the same place where the stitching line is that we worked on before. And let's just run that area, and it's going to tack this whole front piece down. Now, if your fabric is flapping around, or maybe you have a ceiling fan on, or your fabric's, not quite behaving, mine's laying nice and still right now, but you could have used a little bit of 505 spray or the 505 glue stick also to tack that down. This is just going to put everything secure and hold it down so that we can do our next step. Now, our next step is going to be some quilting. Okay, so it's a nice little grid design, and it's just going to quilt this area and give it some cool texture. And again, you see these thread tails? My machine cuts the tails, but it does leave them on here when it starts and stops. So I'm just dealing with those now, so I don't have a lot to deal with later. Okay, so we're gonna let the machine run the grid. I may speed up this part because it's a little bit of stitching. The whole bag takes about 30 minutes to stitch, but most of that is because of the detail of the tiles. So now it's going to start doing our cross hatching in this grid, and really it just gives it a lovely texture. You can see on the zipper while we're watching that stitch, I have the pull attached to the zipper, but it's way out here on this side. And so I'm just doing this so I can save length on the zipper tape instead of cutting it way on the inside. This way I can just cut just a little bit more than I need, and it's not so much that I've wasted on the edge. Oftentimes when I'm doing a zipper bag, this is how I will do it if I'm using the zipper that comes on a roll instead of using a pre-made finished zipper. It's the kind like used for a dress or bag. So we're just getting some of those grid lines down there. And I've got the same color thread as the fabric. So that's the color I'm going to be using for this whole project. The little tile designs, if you want to, you could change the thread and make those all different colors. But I'm going to be just doing texture contrast. And so I'm using the same color thread just for a really elegant look. You're free to use whatever color thread you like. I'm just going to be using the same thread through the whole project. While that's finishing stitching, I've got a piece of mylar film. Can you see this shiny bit? So this is just the part that I've cut off, and I've got, you know, just a bit that I know about how big it is because I've kind of measured it, and this is going to cover up the sparkle blossom, the little tiles on the front of the bag. So what I'm going to do is after this gets done stitching, I'm going to lay this down over the quilting. And then I'm going to let the background of the tiles stitch so that this will be, this mylar will cover the background of the tiles. You can see how shiny it is on here. Sometimes mylar has a right side and a wrong side, but this one doesn't. This one's fine on both sides. So I'm simply going to start my stitching of the tiles. And I'm going to let it really complete these little tiled areas. This is going to take a few minutes, so I definitely am going to speed run through this. But it's so beautiful. Let me see if I can get you in real close. Do you see how the stitching, it's not a different color, it's the same color, but because it's stitching right on top of the fabric on the mylar, it looks nice and sparkly, like I've used a metallic thread, but I haven't. I just put this film behind it. And this is a nice open little box. It's just a square set on point. And so it's just a lovely little grid. And we'll just watch that stitch out. Okay, so this series of little grids is going to stitch out. And while that does that, we will speed up through this part and then be ready for our next step. Okay, all these bits, these little tiles are now stitched, and we can remove the mylar. It's super easy to remove. You just take the edge of it. Let me lift up my presser foot. But you just take the edge of the mylar and you simply peel it away. So I'm not tugging on the embroidery stitches. I'm just removing the mylar. And because the stitches went into it with a needle, it kind of perforated the edges. And I mean, it perforated that in there, but that's not going to pull off. So I'm just pulling off the excess mylar that's all around the edges of those little tile areas. It's actually super fun to do. And there. So now my embroidery has those shiny bits, which is lovely. And I'm going to trim up some of these thread tails just to get them out of the way so they don't get caught under any other stitching. And if there's any other bits of mylar that are still left, I can pick those away later. I just want to get most of it away for now. There's one more little thread tail. Okay. Now I'm going to run the next step, which are the little blossoms. It's telling me I don't have enough bobbin thread. So let's go ahead and turn to the bobbin. So let's start with a fresh one. And you're right, there's not enough on there to finish that next step. So bobbins close by so that they're easy to get to, and I like using pre-wound bobbins with my embroidery machine. So I'm just going to stick that in. That bobbin's just white, which is generally what your embroidery machine calls for. Anyway, check your manual to see what your machine likes best. All right, so I'm going to put this back on. Now I'm going to push start, and it's going to run the little details inside the tiles. So if we look at the screen over here, you see those little red pluses? That's the section that it's doing right now. It's going to, ours aren't red, obviously. They're just the same green as our top thread, but they're going to stitch those details in each of those little squares, just for a little bit of extra definition. So I'll show you on this bag right here. This is the part that it's stitching right now, are those little details. That one still has a string on it. Okay, so it's going to stitch these details. That can be a different color if you'd like, but it'll stitch each of these 4 little sparkle blossoms, and then that center area. That center area I left there because it's a lovely little place for a rhinestone, or you could use it to put a brad in, or a button, or a bead. It's just lovely. And if you don't do anything, it just has the sparkle right there from the Mylar. And you see how the Cuddle kind of makes it bubble up a little bit right there. It's just so nice. So you can leave it like that as well. But that's the part that it's stitching now. After it's done with all of the blossoms, then it's going to come back and do this nice little outline on each of the tiles. Okay, so you can see it stitching that first blossom right now. And it's going to do that 4 times and make 4 lovely little tiles across this size of bag. This is the 6x10 hoop, or the 6x10 hoop size. I actually have it in a bigger hoop, but your 6x10 would work well. If you have an 8x12, I would recommend stitching it in a larger hoop like the 7x12 or 8x12. That just gives you more room around the edges of your design to work in here and kind of keep everything flat. Sometimes if your design is exactly the size of the hoop, it fits in the hoop, but these edges can flip up and then flip back onto your project, and they get in the way when you're stitching. So using a bigger hoop just gives you more room for the fabric to relax so that you can get a really nice stitch out. We'll come back when all these little blossoms are stitched. Okay, we're done with those gorgeous little blossoms in the middle of each tile. And so now I'm going to let the embroidery machine go again. Again, I'm not changing the color, but I'm going to go ahead and let it start running the outline stitch for each little tile. And this is going to be in the same color. So it's going to do a neat little decorative border just to outline those little guys and give it a fun texture. After this step gets done, we're really almost done. These detail stitches are probably the longest part of this bag, but it gives you the opportunity to tidy things up around your machine or in your sewing room, and or you can just sit there and watch it. That's oftentimes what I do, is I just sit there and watch it the whole time. I'm probably going to speed up through this process just because, you know, we don't need to watch it on video. It's going to stitch, it's going to go around and around, make those beautiful satin stitches, and then a little decorative finish on the top of it. Okay, all of our embroidery is done on that little front panel. So this is what we've got now. All of our embroidery, as you can see, the mylar just catching the light. It's really sparkly. And really, there's nothing, we didn't do anything different. You just added that little bit of mylar into the stitching. Okay, so what we need to do now, let's back this up just a bit so you can see, is we need to add our lining fabric. And this is how we're going to do that. It's too much thread. Let's trim these little threads first. Any little threads that are on here, I want to go ahead and take care of now. Okay, so for my lining, this is my zipper. It's still flapping in the breeze here. It's fine. I've got a piece of satin that I'm going to use for the lining. And it's just regular polyester satin. And I thought this bright ruby color would be really lovely. And we can do this a couple of ways. So we could fold, you know, a little flap down. I don't need that much. Maybe an inch. And then cover that bottom part of the zipper, that stitching line that's gone back and forth a couple of times. We could do it like that. Or what I like doing is I like to have the right side of the fabric touching the back of the hoop. And then I'm going to pull my fabric up so that this edge covers that bottom of the zipper, just like we did with the front when we folded it over. We're doing the same thing, but with the lining. So I've got my lining flipped up out of the way. And since my embroidery arm is on the inside of my machine, I'm flipping it out this way. If your embroidery arm is on the outside of your machine, then you may want to flip the design so that this part is on the inside and not flipping out so it doesn't get stuck under there. So it just depends how your machine is built. Okay, and I'm going to add one little piece of tape right there in the middle, but I can feel my seam line under there, and that tape is not going to get stitched on. So now what I can do is I can flip my hoop over, put it back on the machine, and see how the lining is going out that way. I double check that this is down, and I'm going to put my presser foot down, and I'm going to stitch the lining on. Okay. Okay, so it's just stitching that lining right back on. And that's going to cover the back side of this embroidery. It'll cover up the little quilting. It'll cover up the back of the sparkle tiles so that our inside will have a nice, tidy finish. Okay, now that the lining is stitched on right there, the pattern is ready to stitch a little placement stitch. So I'm going to run that little bit of placement, and this is the placement stitch that shows us where to put our little piece of fold over elastic with a piece of hardware. So I just have a 3/4 inch D-ring lobster clasp looped over a 5/8 inch piece of fold over elastic, and I'm going to put it with the lobster clasp looped onto the fold over elastic, and my raw edges are actually going to be pointing to the outside of the bag, and the lobster clasp is actually on the inside. This will be correct when you flip it over, but for stitching we want to orient it like this. And I'm going to add just a tiny piece of tape right here outside the stitching line so that that doesn't flip around. And I need to put my presser foot on, and I'm actually going to scoot my stitches over so that my foot doesn't get caught on that little piece of elastic, because my foot can. So I'm just going to make it so that that foot was going over the top of it. Okay, and now my tab is secure, but I'm going to also put this piece of tape that I had, and I'm going to make sure that that tab is going to stay on the inside of my bag and not flip around while I'm working on it. And so I just taped it to the front there. Okay, just a little piece of tape. All right, now that our lining is on, I'm going to go ahead and flip my hoop over again. And now I can take off this other tape that was holding it down to help me get the lining on just right. I'm taking all that tape off of the back side. And now I'm going to flip the lining over on this side. So I just flipped it to the right side. And I'm going to use these same pieces of tape and just tape the edges down so that they do not flip up as we finish the project. Okay, so kind of pulling that taut, adding the tape there. This little piece of tape is kind of got wrinkly, so let's not use that one because he might get stuck. I'm just using the Scotch super sticky tape. Some people like to use painter's tape with the blue kind. And actually over here on this side, I'm actually going to tape. Really want to keep that out of the way. And that's not the edge of my stitching. I just don't want this fabric to get stuck up under the hoop. So I'm going to just tape it down like that. Okay, my stitching line is actually right about here. So that's well out of the way of the stitching, but I've got that taped down really well. You see that? So here's our stitching line that's going to be up here. That is all ready now. Okay, so what we're ready to stitch on now is the front piece of our bag. And so I've got my other piece of Cuddle from the strip, and let's cut off the little piece that we need for this. And I'm using the same, this is the outside of the bag. So this is your outside piece. I know we were messing with the lining, but we're going to work on the outside piece. And I'm going to pat it to make sure my nap is going the correct way. I'm going to cover my zipper up and cover the entire rest of the bag. I am double checking that everything's laying flat and nice and nothing's going to get flipped around in there. I can feel my little piece of hardware over here. And I know our zipper's closed, but this is okay because what we're going to do is... oops, lower the presser foot. We're going to stitch this seam down so our zipper pull is well out of the way. Our zipper pull is way over here. And this way, we're not fighting against the zipper pull. We don't have to worry about where the zipper pull is or how it's affecting anything. It's just completely out of the way. All right, and so this is like working on a book, okay? So after this is done right here, the machine's gonna stop right about there. And now I can lift to my presser foot, and I could take my hoop off if I needed to, but what I'm going to do, see, that looks a little blurry. Let's get in a little closer. There we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this like a book. See what I did? I just opened it like a book. There's my zipper right there. Here's a little string. Let's cut that off. And now my zipper, I'm going to open my zipper, because we don't want to sew our bag closed, right? And so my zipper tab is right there, and I can see that even if it flips around, it's not anywhere close to the opening. The other thing that I can do right now, if I wanted to, is I could go ahead and slit this open so that I have a place to pull it open. So I just slit the stabilizer just a little bit right there, just so I can get my finger or my scissors in there later. Okay, so that's not compromising our stabilizer. It just gives me a little opening. So there's my hardware. It's out of the way. I'm going to close the book. Tuck that back underneath the presser foot. And now I'm going to put my presser foot down, and I'm going to continue around this outside edge of the outer fabric of the bag. Okay, so this is the outside edge. See, now it's finishing that edge. So since that edge is finished, I can actually cut my zipper very close. Save this for another project. That's why I like using these zippers on a roll instead of just regular zippers. It just makes it so easy. Okay, we're done with the outside stitching, but we have one more step. And that last one is to put the inside of the lining on. So there's one inside. Okay, we're going to put the other side of the lining on. And to do that, we're going to just cover the entire placement stitch with this second piece of satin right side down. And again, I'm going to get more tape because if you're using satin, you know that satin can be pretty slippery. And so I'm just taping it outside the stitching lines, not anywhere where the machine's going to stitch, but outside the stitching line, either onto the side of the hoop or onto the stabilizer, depending on where your tape likes to stick best. This is the Scotch Super Sticky Tape, and I find it works really well with this polyester fabric and with the poly mesh stabilizer. Okay, so now that our lining is completely covering everything on back, all of our placement stitches, everything, I'm going to put it back on the machine, make sure that that part's tucked back under there, and now I'm going to run the last step, which is again another outline, but this outline is stitching the lining onto the bag. This is going all the way around. It's leaving an opening at the bottom so that we can turn the bag inside in through the lining, and then we'll turn the whole bag right side out through that little place in the zipper opening so we can get the outside in. We're going to turn the inside out first so we can get the lining all settled, and then we turn the rest of the bag right side out. All right. That's all of our stitching. So let's take this off the hoop. Off the machine. And let's finish this guy up. Okay. So I've got the bag off the machine. Let's see. Not quite focusing really well right there. Okay. Now we're going to trim this out of the hoop. Got tape that's taped to the hoop, so just pull that away. I can set my hoop aside, and now I'm going to trim all around our placement stitches. Now I've got a lot of layers here. I've got 2 layers of fabric, a layer of batting, the 2 lining layers, and the stabilizer. So you'll want to use your good, this is a place where you want to use the good fabric shears. Okay. I'm just cutting away what I don't need. Okay. And then down here at the end where I have that little notch for the opening, I'm going to go around it. This gives me a nice tidy little place to tuck in. I am going closer at the corners. And some of these bulky places, you might want to trim off a little bit of the outer fabric, just not too close, but just so you have a nice finish. Okay, so this is our bag. This is the inside of the bag, front and the back. So we're going to go into the lining area. It's the only one we can go into. So all of this is sewn shut, but we can go in between our 2 layers of lining, and now we can turn this right side out. So this is about a 3-inch opening on this 6x10 bag, and I'm just turning it right side out. Okay, so I'll have all of the lining turned in a second, and as I turn, I'm going to push out the corners with my finger. If you need to, you can use a little turning tool. This is our zipper area up here. This is the top of the bag. So this is as if we have the whole thing inside out. Here we go. Okay, so this is the inside of our bag, inside out. And our little opening right here, this is our opening. I'm just tucking that in, and now I can whip stitch that. Okay, you can whip stitch it. You can do a ladder stitch. A ladder stitch is very, very nice. It's a very tidy finish. And remember that little slit that we made with our scissors and the stabilizer? That is that right there. So now I can see inside there. So now I can kind of tear that open a little bit more. But really what I want to be able to do is just clip the stabilizer and not the zipper. I don't want to nick my zipper or the lining. I want to be super careful. And so I'm just going to trim that stabilizer away. And this stabilizer is nice and soft, so it's not, it is a cutaway, so I am having to cut it away. But it also isn't crunchy, and that's why I like using the poly mesh stabilizers, because they're not crunchy, they're not stiff. They let the bag still be a nice little zipper bag without feeling like they've got paper or even, you know, crunchy paper inside of them. So I will just, I'm going to go actually get my tinier blade scissors and trim the rest of this away. No, maybe I can do it. Okay. So I'm just going slowly because I really do not want to nick the zipper. If I cut the zipper, then I'm going to have a hole in my zipper. I don't want that. There we go. Okay, so I would just go slowly and trim the rest of that away too. But here we can see our opening for the front of the bag, for the outside of the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it right side out all the way now. And again, I'm paying attention at the corners. So here's our top edge. And at this top edge over here, I'm going to tuck that in so I have a nice rounded corner. And then the bottom edge, let's poke that out really well. You can use your fingernail. You can use a Hera tool or a turning tool. That would be nice as well. And, you know, once I get this little piece of stabilizer out, this is going to be so nice. There's our top. Again, I'm just adjusting everything. I haven't sewn that bottom part up. That place where we folded all these pieces in, we could trim the bulky parts for the outer fabric and that batting away. But here's our little hardware tab. I'll take the piece of tape off. And now we're done with a gorgeous little zipper bag. Isn't that pretty? I really love this sage. No, not sage. Spruce. That's what the name of this fabric is. Spruce. I used a shiny thread, so I used a Floriani thread. That's the one I used right there. So it's super glossy. And you can see how it stitched over the Mylar and just gave it this beautiful sparkle effect. I think that's very, very elegant. Really happy with it. I hope you get a chance to make yourself some tiled, quilted, sparkle blossom bags. And try it with Cuddle. I mean, of course you can use other fabrics as well, but the Cuddle's just wonderful to work with. And it makes such an elegant little bag. It's almost like velvet, except it's easy care, 100% poly. Nothing fiddly about this at all. Just beauty. All right, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And you can find this and more designs over at designsbybabymoon.com. And you can join our Facebook group, the Designs by Baby Moon Friends and Fans group, to get real-time, 24/7 support. There's always somebody in there that can answer your questions and help out with whatever embroidery project you're working on. So thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.